Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. Here this week for UFC 285. It's going down this Saturday in Las Vegas. Special one for us here. Our dude returns, man. What feels like an eternity. We got Jon Jones back. Moving up to heavyweight here, taking on Ciryl Gane for the vacant title at the moment. Our co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko looking to make another title defense of her flyweight strap there, going against new contender, one of your favorites, Alexa Grasso, and featured bout of the evening, incredible fight between Neal and undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov, and you can't leave out the three-time defending NCAA champion Bo Nickal here making his UFC debut. We got a total of 14 fights to keep us busy this Saturday. Before we get started, do us a favor real quick, like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't yet. Before we get into the pay-per-view, we did both squeak by with some profit last week, but I'll take it, man. Green's green. Not a lot of plays for us to go over.
Yeah, kind of stopped the bleeding from the previous 2 weeks. It was nice. Like you said, profit's profit, and we'll take it even if it's small. We'll go over your card first. Man, I don't think you expected Jordan Levitt to win like this, but that Levitt bet at plus money, awesome hit for sure. I think, to start off the card, you had a nice cushion whenever you played Aliyev by decision. That was his win condition, and there was a close call with the guillotine, but he ended up riding that out and getting the decision win. That was a good 1.13 unit profit. It was Charles Johnson, who, it was a close fight. Not sure where that decision should have gone, but definitely a close fight, and that was the only thing that took away from your profit. You ended up the night positive 0.74 units with a 15% ROI. And then looking over at my card, man, the two plays that lost, that was the worst. That was the worst performance I could have asked for from Johan Lioness. It looked like he looked like his last two fights. I just thought that he was going to put it all out there this fight and actually go for it. Didn't even throw a punch for me. I did get to cash on our Tennessee boy and Trevor Peek a little bit. I put him in a parlay with Joe Selecki to win. And honestly, both of those guys covered their price tags. I ended up positive 0.11 units with a 4% return on investment. And yeah, I'm happy to wear the cap whenever we're both in the green. In our main event for the heavyweight strap, we have Jon Jones taking on Ciryl Gane. I haven't felt this way for a UFC card in a really long time, man. The GOAT is back and ready to prove some people wrong. If you can't tell, he is my favorite fighter and has been my favorite fighter even growing up. He definitely hasn't made that an easy thing with all the antics outside of the octagon, but truly it's been so nice as a fan to watch his career develop, from the youngest ever UFC champion to the most title defenses as well. Our group chat, it's been popping off this week with a bunch of hot takes, but for a guy who has given more to the sport than 99% of the fighters in the history of the organization, I think it's pretty dope that he's coming back, even though he doesn't have to prove anything else, just to challenge himself. Yeah. So now I'm breaking this fight down. I've tried to wash away that bias. I look at this fight objectively, and I do think it's going to be a tough fight for my boy. Per usual, Jon has the physical advantages on paper, even moving up a weight class here, but Gane, he's a much different fighter than anyone Jones has faced in the past. And, I think first off, you got to note, Gane is an absolute freak of nature. He's tall, he's long, he's fast, he's coordinated. And I look at all he's been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. And honestly, I think you can attribute a ton of that success to Gane's sheer athleticism. I mean, looking back at every heavyweight over the history of the UFC, and I honestly don't know if there's a more athletic heavyweight in the division, definitely more powerful or stronger, but I'm doubtful that anybody could dribble and dunk a basketball like we've seen videos of Gane do. Yeah, ooping it. Big guys that have that amount of athleticism are rare, and finding ones that want to get punched in the face are even more difficult to find. Watching the Embedded this week, I think Gane's coach, Fernand Lopez, said it best when he said Gane has set the new standard when it comes to footwork and movement in the heavyweight division. And here's the thing, man. As Jones has stated in the past, that out of his three brothers, he is the least athletic. It was something that drove him to get into fighting as opposed to taking the football path like his brothers. And, I'll stop with the speculation, get down more to the bulk of my breakdown. I'm worried about Jones making this a kickboxing match. I'm not sure why or what his reasoning is for choosing to stand with two of the best strikers in his division at the time, with Dominic Reyes and Thiago Santos. I know a lot of people argue that he was playing with his food with Santos. He knew the knees were compromised. What's his excuse for the Dom fight? I mean, I've heard maybe he just wasn't motivated, but hell, it's, he tried getting the fight to the mat, and he was 0 for 4 through 3 rounds trying to get the takedown. And even when he was able to get the takedowns in the 4th and the 5th, he wasn't able to have it he wasn't able to have significant control time. I think it's entirely possible that Jones runs into the same problems getting this fight to the mat, especially early. And if that's the case, he's now going to be in a kickboxing fight with a bigger, more powerful striker with far better technique than the guy that you were just able to beat by the skin of your teeth in Dominic Reyes. I think this fight is predicated on if Jon can get the fight to the mat, and I think this fight is predicated on if Jon can get this fight to the mat. And if he can't, I do think it's going to be an anxiety-filled 5 rounds, man. Don't get me wrong. I do think Jones has the skills on the feet to make it interesting, but I do think it's the ground game that's going to secure him the win here. I don't think there's much value on the current prices on Jones. I see him winning this fight a little bit over 60% of the time, which is on par with the -150, -170. Way earlier, I snagged an awesome line at -108 with Jones, but I decided on holding off on tracking that as well. For this one, I think I just want to be a fan, witness greatness, and, watch him challenge himself at the highest level yet again.
Yeah, man, it's fantastic to have him back. You'd referenced it when you were talking about being a big fan growing up. I have it down, probably 14 years old, something like that. We started watching Jon Jones, went to Houston to watch him fight his last time out. And you talked about it, questionable decision-making outside the octagon, but I don't think it's up for debate, man. I think he's the greatest fighter that's ever graced the octagon. You won't get any pushback from me there. You talked about his brothers being in the NFL. He's a genetic freak, absolute massive advantages at light heavyweight, and moving up, still going to have a reach advantage here against Ciryl Gane. He's an incredible distance striker. He's the oblique kicks, the sharp elbows, jab. He's a guy that's proven over a long time to be very hard to hit clean. He's got phenomenal cardio. He's a phenomenal wrestler, JUCO national champion, something like that possibly. And in the cage, man, he just seems so well-rounded, holds fantastic fight IQ. And, to see that potentially probably being 2-2 and coming back, needing that 5th round against Dominic Reyes and putting a stamp on it, it's nice to see that with all the championship experience he has. But the elephant in the room of the 3-year layoff, how is he going to perform with the extra weight? Has he gained the power and the size, the proper weight? It is a big question mark coming into it. And then another two thing, you talked about the Dominic Reyes and the Santos fight. It wasn't like vintage Jon Jones. It didn't leave you with the best taste in your mouth. Even going back to an OSP fight, coming off that. He's now 35. People are making fun of the fact he's training with Dontel Mays, Maurice Green, DeCastro, Walt Harris. I just hope the game hasn't passed him by in these 3 years. I do hold some reserves myself, and you kind of talked a whole lot about the Gane's athleticism. He has set a new standard for the heavyweight division, man. There's nobody like him. The way he was able to move out of the Tai Tuivasa power and just snipe him with that counter shot before he finished him. It's one of the more beautiful punches I've seen to date. And I know it's a thing everybody says here, but this very well could be a guy who really is able to beat up the legs of Jon Jones for the first time, because Ciryl Gane is just absolutely known for racking up points. You see the Jairzinho Rozenstruik fight, and a credentialed kickboxer wearing out his legs, just to rack up points. It is a weapon that Ciryl Gane likes to go to. He's fought 6 times since Jones' layoff, and he's still pretty young in his career, making massive improvements, but you do see Francis never show the slightest inkling of wrestling throughout his entire UFC career, and be down 2 rounds to Gane and be able to try to make that adjustment to just throw caution to the wind, see what's going to work, and it did work, and it was a bit worrisome, because if Jon Jones has the IQ, I think he does, and I think he's going to wrestle here, man. I do have a gut feeling on it, and I do hope it's a bit more successful than the Dominic Reyes fight, Ciryl Gane's comment, I don't know how truth it was about being lazy and not training. Jones smells a trap. I think I smell a trap too. I got a feeling that guy I think he's trained nothing but his wrestling since that Ngannou fight, to be honest with you. I bet he's brought in some very, very good guys to work on it. So that is kind of what I'm curious, because if Jon Jones is able to get that grappling going, I think he could look a -250 here, and You said it a few weeks back, man. This is a gambling podcast. The GOAT's back. Got 1 unit on Jon Jones at minus 155.
Look, I got to address the training partners of Jones. Like, yes, they are some goofballs, but it is difficult to find somebody that size, and they're all failed heavyweights, so he knows that they're not going to be potential opponents in the future. We look at Ciryl Gane. Who's he training with, man? Alain Boudot. What? And Nasruddin Imavov. I don't know. I don't think it's bait. I think Ciryl Gane was speaking from the heart. He is the type of guy to have the talent, but might not have the hard work. Yes, he barely got beat by Francis with wrestling, but how much are you going to learn from the time that he got out-wrestled by Francis to now to be able to stop Jon fucking Jones, 2 times JUCO national champ?
Nothing.
I don't think so, man. So I'm with you. I love that you have the unit on Jon Jones, and maybe I can talk myself into also putting it on him, but we're in for a treat on Saturday.
In our co-main event, we got Valentina looking to defend the flyweight strap against Alexa Grasso. And, I was one of many that I thought wish she would have ran it back with Talia Santos. Almost kind of seemed like she ducked her to a point with Santos scheduled to fight just 2 weeks ago. And maybe I was a little bit biased having taken a dog shot on Talia Santos that night. But I do think a lot of people thought she should have walked away with the belt. Similar money line situation here. I just don't think I'm going to get to the dog shot, though. It's kind of a rather quick breakdown from me. Alexa Grasso, she's done nothing but prove me wrong every step of the way, man. I didn't think this girl would ever even fight for a title at 125 after moving up. I just don't think she's got the style to beat Valentina. I think you got to be a very physically strong girl, and I think you need to be a primary grappler first. I don't really necessarily think Grasso meets either of those criteria. She's a boxer first, and I'll give it to her. I think she's got the best boxing, and probably of the top 10 women's division. She's phenomenal at it, and her ground game seems to be improving at massive rates, even shooting takedowns, hitting submissions of her own. But I think she's going to get a little bit bullied around in the clinch, find herself just physically not as strong as Valentina. And when I look at Valentina, I think she's trying to add the last ruby to the belt. To me, I think Alexa's earned it, but I look through and see Santos and Blanchfield potentially for Rowe. I think those are a little bit harder matchups than Grasso. I think Val can kind of outpoint her. I think she's a really good counter striker, although she isn't going to throw the volume of Grasso, which is a big advantage she has. I think she's a little bit too fast of a counter striker. The ability to mix it up, can hold Grasso down for extended periods of time. So I see her being a little bit better everywhere. I don't think there's really any value left on Valentina's money line, though. I will have her nowhere in my card. But I'm massively invested in this fight going over. I've got the over 1.5, over 2.5, and the over 3.5 on my card. I do respect the skills of Alexa Grasso, and I think she's going to hang toe-to-toe, probably still a round or two with Valentina. But Valentina's just going to do enough to cap it off and probably take a decision win here. But no, you're a little bit higher on your girl here, man.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, finally worked her way to the title shot. And for what it's worth, if you get 4 wins in a row at 125, you deserve a title shot. So I'm kind of with the odds or with the matchmakers on giving Alexa Grasso the shot before Santos the rematch. Admittedly, I did pull the trigger a little bit early on her. I'm surprised with the amount of Valentina love she's getting. She's coming off that split decision, and this might be a hot take, but I believe Grasso is her toughest competition in the last 9 fights since she lost to Amanda Nunes. I think there's a lot of people that would argue Jessica Andrade, Caitlin Chookagian, but I disagree. I think they're both awesome, don't get me wrong, but I think the mounted crucifixes speak for themselves. Mm-hmm. They do not have the right skills to round out their game against someone in Valentina who is fluent in all aspects of MMA. Grasso, on the other hand, does have a solid base in everything. She's got some of the cleanest boxing in the division, like you said, and something that I don't think people are really honing in on, the chin to go along with it. She has the Mexican chin, dude. She can take a crack, and we've seen it a couple of times. And then, like you said, she's also a purple belt in BJJ and an underrated ground game that can catch her opponents off guard. Valentina, proven time and time again that she is alone at the top of the heap of the women's flyweight division, doing it in every way possible, submission, KO, going the full 25 minutes. I do think that it's fair to say that Val's the rightful favorite in this fight, but I really do believe the odds makers are counting Grasso out simply on the results of Val's title defenses up until this point. I think Grasso can keep her honest standing and hold her own if it goes to the ground. She has the ability to make the fights really close. I kind of liken it to like the Magny effect, where once she gets into her groove, her boxing is so good that the rhythm of her striking can kind of stop opponents from getting in their own groove, and they lack offense themselves. At 29 years old, I do think she's coming up at the perfect time in her career, beaming with confidence from her win streak. And Val's 34 years old and primed to fuck up at least once, man. I know we're talking about a different caliber of women's fighting here, but we are still talking about women's MMA. How many times do we have to be reminded that, you know, the odds makers tend to over-exaggerate the dominance of women's champions? Her last fight, Val's last fight against a formidable opponent, ended by split, and I think she's up against another girl who's just as good, and you're getting another outrageous price tag. I'm on the Grasso money line, and I'm on the over 1.5, which has gone 10-1 since 2017 in Valentina Shevchenko fights. And it's only at minus 250. So I think there's a couple of really good spots to play this fight, and happy to be on them. For the feature bout of this card, we go to the welterweight division where we see Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Neal. I'm extremely excited that the UFC was able to keep this fight together after Neal pulled from the originally scheduled one in January. And I'll start by saying that I am on the hype train for Shavkat at this point. Dude is just so fucking big for the division, and his credentials are just as scary as you could imagine coming from Kazakhstan. Master in sport and MMA, master of sport and combat sambo, and a terrifying 16-0 record, all by way of finish, man. Dude hasn't even seen a third round in his one time in his pro career, and he's 4 fights into his UFC contract. The most difficult thing about capping Shavkat here is the unknown of how he's going to respond to adversity. Up until this point, the most he's ever endured is not landing his first takedown in the fight. I actually do believe that this is going to be his toughest opponent to date in Neal. MMA math would beg to differ with Magny having a win over Neal. But as I mentioned in the previous breakdown, Magny, he just has that style that can throw you off and you feel like you can't get anything going. So I'm trying not to let that hold too much weight here. As we do know about Neal, his stand-up game is his bread and butter, and he's managed to highlight that aspect of his game to the amazing takedown defense he's had over his career at 85%. When he is on the feet, he's shown that piston of a left hand his whole career, and I have to imagine that that's going to be his go-to in this bout as well. Now, if this fight stays standing, I do think that we could have a competitive fight on our hands, somewhat reminiscent of that Chimaev-Burns, where Chimaev was running through everybody and then finally got to somebody who was upper echelon competition, and it ended up being a whole lot closer than he had expected, which is why I've avoided laying the juice on Shavkat to get the finish here. Even if it does stay standing, I think Shavkat has shown us a wide arsenal of powerful weapons on the feet that I would also believe edges out a decision. If this fight goes to the ground, as I suspect it will, I think Shavkat is going to have an absolute field day. He is fucking violent when he's in top position. It's a never-ending onslaught where he's postured up and using his length to throw these punches, trying to finish the fight with every single swing. And the moment you give him an opportunity, he will wrap up a submission when you're trying to scramble to your feet. And his squeeze is unreal. I'm having a difficult time finding a way for Neal to win this outside of a banana peel incident, which is why I threw Shavkat in a parlay. I don't know, man. I think Shavkat's the future, so I'm happy that this is our feature bout.
Yeah, I think Shavkat's the real deal as well. Like you said, glad they kept it together. It was supposed to happen in January. Neal fell out, and you and I both a little bit of suspicion that all the money came in on Shavkat opening like minus 285, minus 300 or something, and steamed to minus 500, which is what it opens here in the rebooking. Big fight for Shavkat, definitely probably heart of his test to date, but man, I looked through Neal's and I think I think the hype's real. I think he's legit. I think this is Neal's toughest fight to date as well, man. And you throw in the health issues he had a couple years ago, the DUI distractions and shit, just ultimately wild card performances. He'll come out there and sleep Magny, beat Bilal Muhammad, stuff all his takedowns, and then, come out there and lose to Wonder Boy, lose to Magny, split with Ponzinibbio. You just don't know what you're getting with Neal sometimes. But when he's on, the sharp strikes, like piston of a left hand, he's on, man. The volume's there, the hand speed that he showed in Vicente Luque looked absolutely ridiculous. The head kicks, Mike Perry, Camacho, 85 you said percent takedown defense that he has on paper. I think he went stuffed 8 for 8 against Bilal Muhammad, who is now proven to be a very good wrestler at the highest level. I think when you put a brawler in front of him, he's going to absolutely pick them apart every single time. He's way too technical. But I do think he's going to be trying to look for a lucky shot here. Shavkat's just way too patient, systematically just breaks guys down in a different method, man. And he's got the ability to mix in the grappling, which I think going to be the X factor here. But on the feet, he's super patient, super long jab. He has those spinning body kicks, spinning, head kicks to Carlston Harris. But a lot of that forward pressure is just to back you into the fence where he's going to grab onto that body lock and trip you down. And you talked about his just relentless, nasty ground and pound. He's nasty in half guard, man. Nasty knee across the belly. Looking to set up all kind of submissions. Finished all 16 of his wins inside the distance. I saw a picture out there today on Twitter of Jeff Neal sized up with Magny. Magny sized up with Shavkat. And I think even more money's going to come in on Shavkat when these guys square off on Friday. You look back to Jeff Neal, it's a long time ago. It's like 2013, but he has a submission loss to Martin Sano, and I just think outside of Bilal Muhammad, he hasn't even really fought a wrestler or someone who's even with the game plan of taking him down since then, and there very well could be still a significant skill gap when it goes there. So I'm going to ride with him to be 17-0 with 17 finishes. I'm going to take a round 2 submission for Shavkat here.
Moving on to the fight of the night, I have chosen Viviane Araujo taking on Amanda Ribas. I had to pick this as my fight of the night. It's the only fight on the card that was close to a pick'em lines, and I'm a fan of both of these girls. First, I love how aggressive they both are. Sadly, after Araujo debuted with that incredible overhand right against Bernardo, she hasn't managed to find a finish, but it's not for a lack of trying. And now with Ribas across the octagon, I do think she's finally got a dance partner that's going to be down to throw down with her. And, they're both insanely close in fight statistics, within 1% of 2 of just about everything from strikes per minute, takedowns per minute, takedown accuracy, and takedown defense. It's like they're the same fighter. Both girls averaging around 2 takedowns per fight, but their takedown defense is sitting around 88 to 90%. And that leads me to think that this is going to be a tough time for either of these girls to get their wrestling going. If this stays on the feet, I give the power edge to Araujo. I think it's possible we see Ribas get herself in trouble not moving her head like she should in the striking exchanges, and we have seen in the past where she's gotten lit up on the feet by a much better striker in Marina Rodriguez. But still, all that being said, the only significant difference in these two girls' fight metrics was actually the striking defense numbers of Ribas sitting at 70% and Araujo's only at 56%. I've kind of always been skeptical of Araujo's cardio, but I will admit that she did a lot better than I anticipated her doing in her last fight with Grasso, where on at least one of the judges' scorecards, she was able to steal one of the championship rounds. Now, I don't know if she won any round, honestly, but she made it close enough in rounds 4 or 5 where I thought that she was going to die before the 5th round, With how close these stats are, I think we're going to be in for a high-paced treat. So I had to make it my fight of the night, although I'm not sure if I've been able to gather like a solid read on the fight.
Yeah, it's an extremely tough fight to call. Like I put in my notes here, I think it is the closest line fight on the whole card, and after breaking down some tape, it totally makes sense to me as well. Ribas, I think I'm still going to say she has the edge in cardio, but I think definitely it was a good showing over 5 rounds, like you said, and back in a 3-rounder. I don't know how much of a difference maker it could be here. I think on the inside, you're going to see Vivi has the better boxing. I think she's a better offensive wrestler, heavy on top. I think is probably going to be the one to have a strength advantage. You see her fighting at 135 on the regional scene and even into her UFC debut as Ribas fought a lot of her career at 115, But at range, I think Ribas fights pretty long. She moves very well on the outside. It is a big cage. I give her the footwork, lateral movement edge. She throws a ton of feints, tries to fight long. And probably going to have the speed advantage with her hands as well. I think pure jiu-jitsu-wise, I think she even might have the bigger submission threat if it hits the mat. And, I think she kind of has an underrated ground game herself. You go back and watch the fights with Chookagian. She loses that one by split decision, but it's because round 1, she neutralizes Chook, takes her down, wins round 1. It's the most decisive round of the whole fight. And I know she gets TKO'd in round 2 against Marina Rodriguez, but she takes her down entire part of round 1 as well. She's got an underrated ground game, man. So I'm going to be passing on the fight. I think it's a close decision. I think I'd rather have plus money in a close decision like this than Viviane Araujo, as I think, like I said, I think she could find herself as the one on top with offensive wrestling. And to see a TKO by Marina Rodriguez, to see a TKO loss to Polyana Viana, go back and watch tape this week and see her hurt bad by Verna Jandiroba. Vivi's got some power, man, and if she lands on the inside, I think we could see Ribas in a little bit of trouble as well. So that's going to be the side I lead. I see a lot of love for her on Twitter this week, so don't like being on a popular underdog, but Vivi's going to be the side for me. For my fight of the night, I went with Mateusz Gamrot versus Jalin Turner. Fight that I am extremely, extremely looking forward to here, man. One I could talk about all night. Gamrot taking a fight on a couple weeks short notice here, but when you look at this guy online, it almost looks like he doesn't miss a day in the gym. He's in phenomenal shape, made 45 earlier in his career. I really doubt the weight is any issue at all. And he's got one of the best gas tanks that I've seen in the UFC, man. The guy can relentlessly wrestle, showing you that in 25-minute affair with Arman Tsarukyan. And I think he's going to be able to set a pretty high pace here in a 3-rounder with Jalin. Strikes fast on the outside, closes the distance extremely quickly. A lot of times it's just to set up his takedowns. And a lot of them are very low single leg takedowns, shooting almost knees and below, which I think is going to be nice to leave his neck out of danger against Jalin here. One of the better chain wrestlers, scramblers that I've seen on the UFC roster. And I think he's a big point here is he is a whole lot more defensively sound and a whole lot more durable than these guys Jalen's been fighting lately. When it boils down to it for me, Gamrot brings in the style that I have seen cause Jalin trouble in the past. You see Malarkey, basically the last minute and a half of round one, find that takedown, ride it out on top of Jalin. I sat right next to Matt Frivola's wife when he puts on a wrestling clinic in Atlanta at UFC 236, and I don't think these guys are anywhere the grappler of Gamrot, and I don't think Jalin is anywhere near the grappler of Benny and Arman, who were able to scramble out of some of those takedowns. But he has got the best weapon for being a lightweight, and that is being 6'3", man. It's a difference maker, and the dude's been on a tear lately. At 28 years old, still seems like the weight comes off with ease, and he really knows how to use his long-range weapons. Nice teep, has a good right hand on the break when guys don't think he can really touch you. He's just an opportunistic submission artist with his long limbs as well. I think one thing that I am worried about here in backing Gamrot is the Benny fight. Benny had a nice body kick from southpaw. Jalin is a southpaw with a nice long body kick as well, and it might be able to keep Gamrot at bay for a little bit. But if he were to find a way to beat Gamrot here, man, I mean, it's almost top 5 of the division for you in the future here for Jalin Turner. This would be his biggest fight to date. But I am going to go in here backing Mateusz Gamrot. I got him at -175. I think it's a completely stylistic matchup than Jalen's been training for all camp and Dan Hooker. And I know what Gamrot's going to do. This guy's had 6 UFC fights, and he shot 70 takedowns. He knows where his strengths lie. He's a superior grappler, superior grass tank. I think he's going to wear on Jalin. He could find a finish late because we've not seen Jalin pushed at all lately whatsoever. I do probably lean toward a decision. Got 2 units on Gamrot, -175.
Yeah, so I like the fight to go over. I think it's going to be competitive, and I think Gamrot is the rightful favorite, and for Gamrot to win this, the majority of the time it's going to go over that 1.5, which you can get at a pretty decent price tag. Here's the thing. I think I said this to you earlier in the week. If Gamrot didn't lose to Benny and he was coming off the Arman Tsarukyan win, I think he'd be like a -300 here. I mean, it's slowly creeping up to that. I think when I said that, it was at -175, and now it's creeping up to the -300. I mean, looking back at Jalin Turner, he's put together an awesome 5-fight win streak, but his best win, probably Brad Riddell, who's no longer ranked in the division. Like, it's not a great win.
From MMA.
Yeah, it's not that great of a win. Mateusz Gamrot, like you said, it's like he's a completely well-rounded MMA fighter. You're gonna have to deal with the striking and the wrestling of him, and just having the physical advantages is not going to be enough whenever he gets into these upper echelon fighters. Like you said, style-wise with Matt Frivola, I think we're looking at a very similar Jalin Turner. I don't think he's added much more to his game. He's just offensively a huge threat to anybody because of his physical advantages. But I think technique-wise, to its core, Mateusz Gamrot's just going to run through him, put him through the ringer, and grind him out. I think the decision's most likely, but if he can get Jalin Turner worn after a couple of rounds, I do think a late finish is pretty probable. For my fighter to keep an eye out for, I have chosen Cody Garbrandt. Yeah. Man, one of the toughest falls that we've seen in recent memory, really from all the way up to the top to where he's at now on I guess only a 2-fight losing streak, but he's 1-4 in his last 5. And he's in a position now where he is a juiced favorite against somebody who's on an L3, and I still don't feel safe playing him, man. I think this is like one of those guys in Trevin Jones that looks like they're trying to hand Cody a win, but in reality, man, you don't just knock out Timur Valiev on by chance and then also finish Mario Bautista after that. I mean, between the Raoni Barcelos, Savid Basharat, and Sayukub Kakramanov, those are tough fights that I do not expect Cody to win at this point in his career. You look at Cody Garbrandt, I think that at this point in his career, he cannot be trusted. His chin cannot be trusted. I'm happy that he took a little over a year off now, but he's only getting older, and if your chin starts failing you before you even hit the age of 30, I don't think it's going to get any better. He's in a weight class where, it's not a good look when you're getting knocked out at 135 pounds consistently, I think that there is a world where he can keep this fight on the feet and outstrike him to a decision, but I don't think he's knocking out Trevin Jones. Trevin Jones has an incredible chin. I don't think he's been finished in it. Okay, other than this Kakramanov finish in round 3, don't think he's been finished outside of that. He's tough, man. He is super tough, and I think that this is a really tough fight for Garbrandt, although I am pulling for him here, and I do think you got to keep an eye out for him because he was the man at one point. Hopefully he can find his footing again and make some waves in the bantamweight division once more.
Yeah, if you would have told me Cody Garbrandt's Tapology page was going to look like that after he was getting his hand raised against Dominic Cruz, I would have told you were absolutely crazy because he looked like a world beater that night. Fighter to watch for me, no shocker, Bo Nickal, man. Massive fan of Bo Nickal, been a fan of Bo Nickal for a long time. Tell people the story all the time. I'll never forget it. 2018, sitting in Miller's Ale House down in Florida. National championships are on TV, and it's Bo Nickal. Miles Martin gets in on a nice takedown, takes Bo Nickal down, and it's one of the best reversals, most iconic pins in wrestling history. It's Bo's highlight of his career. Reverses him, pins him, basically like a mounted guillotine situation in wrestling. I love him, man. Been paying attention to him ever since. 3-time national champion, under 23 world champion. Crazy to think that a guy who's not even made his UFC debut here very well could take the strap off the current and former middleweight champions on the roster right now. I'm extremely curious to see if there's anybody on the roster that's going to be able to compete with this level of wrestling despite his inexperience in the cage. I want to bring up one other thing is we very rarely have seen wrestlers of this caliber make it over to the UFC, willing to get punched in the face. Yoel, Sarah McMahon, Cejudo, they've all fought for a title at one time, man, And Daniel Cormier, exactly, held a belt. The level of wrestling is an absolute difference maker, and I do see Bo Nickal going to the top very quick. A minus 2,000 favorite. I think he's the second biggest favorite in UFC history behind Alexander Romanov over Chase Sherman. There are plenty of reasons here to have your eyes on Bo Nickal on Saturday.
And in all fairness, Romanov covered that price tag. I think it's very likely that we see Bo Nickal also cover this price tag. Heck yeah, love that as your fighter to watch. For my underdog of the card, I'm taking Alexa Grasso. Kind of talked her up already in the co-main event breakdown. But I do think that she's got all the skills to cover that price tag absolutely 100%. I think that she goes in there and covers a plus 500 price tag. I really do think that she's going to make it more competitive than even Valentina's expecting. And I do think that this is one of Valentina's toughest opponents to date outside of when she's jumping up weight classes to fight Nunes. And Valentina Shevchenko is 34 years old. Yeah. 9-fight victory. This is about the time where they don't start taking it as serious. And I think Alexa Grasso, the Mexican pride coming up in the UFC, it's kind of
the new PI.
Yeah, the new PI. I don't know. Everything's pointing towards Mexico. And I think if Mexico could have 3 champions the same way Africa was able to have 3 champions, I think the UFC would love it. So, Val's not even selling fights, man. She's not able to sell fights, and she's on a 9-fight win streak. I think the UFC would love if Alexa Grasso would win. I would love it if Alexa Grasso win, and maybe my bias is getting a little bit in the way. But I'm pulling for Alexa Grasso here, and that's why she's my dog.
Texting earlier in the week, you said maybe a little Pena Nunez vibe, so took a little stab on that submission prop. Hopefully, if she gets it done, that'd be the way I hope it does. Underdog for me, I'm gonna go Mana Martinez plus 250, another decent sized underdog here, man. And it's the only underdog I've taken a shot on this card, but I've been less than impressed with his opponent, Cameron Simon, and I don't think he's fought near the level of competition Mana Martinez has. Simon on the South African regional scene, only 22 years old. Mana Martinez got 7 guys on his resume of 11 fights who have already made it to the UFC or at least the Contender Series. When you look at Cameron's last couple wins, man, they're come from behind third round stoppages. He shows heart, but man, you're down on the scorecards to worse competition than Mana, in my opinion. Simon, you could say he has a perceived edge in grappling. Mana just hasn't really looked like that big of an offensive threat, and defensively, his showing against Ronnie Lawrence didn't really look that well, but I don't think you can compare the wrestling of Ronnie Lawrence and Cameron Simon whatsoever, and I do bring that fight up because Mana was able to stay safe, work back to his feet, and while he did get dropped a couple times, he stayed in it, man. He fought hard and almost got the round 3 stoppage himself. I think he's a phenomenal boxer, a much better striker in tight than Cameron is, and you look at some of the regional scene knockouts that Mana has over like Jose Johnson and some other guys, they're nasty knockouts. I understand people thinking Cameron Simon could win this fight, and he could be a slight favorite, really. But when you're down the first 8 minutes to Josh Wayne Kim and Stephen Koslow, I can't get to 72% implied odds whatsoever, man, against your best competition to date. So I'm almost wanting to up this to a 1-unit shot. I have a half unit on Mana Martinez at plus 250.
For my prop of the night, I went with fight ends by sub in the Bo Nickal Jamie Pickett fight. Nice. I don't think Jamie Pickett's going to win this by any stretch of the imagination, but I guess there is a world where Bo leaves his neck open. He's going to be shooting for takedowns. We know that. Guaranteed. Yeah, that's guaranteed. So that there, I guess, is an opportunity for Pickett to lock up a sub. But the majority of this bet is on me thinking that Bo Nickal is going to be getting the sub here. His current price tag suggests that he wins this fight 95% of the time, which, oddly enough, I agree with, man. I think Jamie Pickett's pretty bad. If he's winning this 95% of the time, the current odds at minus 120, that's like 54% implied. I think he wins this by submission 70% of the time, man. So a huge edge on the line, in my opinion. So I had to play the fight ends by sub. There is definitely a chance that he postures up and just rains down some punches. I think he probably would like to get a KO win on his first UFC debut. But if he's smart, he sticks to his bread and butter. He's going to go in there, shoot for the takedown, get an arm triangle, and just submit Jamie Pickett, who I think's in some trouble come Saturday.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I think he's going to submit him too. Prop for me, I'm going to go to our main event. I'm going to take Shevchenko versus Grasso, and I'm going to give you the over 3.5 at plus 100 even money. I'm going to go with my gut here. I truly think this fight goes the full 25 minutes. I think Valentina, like I said, tad bit better striker, tad bit better grappler, but I don't think she's heads and shoulders are better than Alexa Grasso here at 34 years old, and I don't think she goes out there and just finishes Grasso like the line indicates, by no means. I think Grasso can make it competitive on the volume. I think she can win a round or two. She's throwing 100 strikes a fight, and I think her ever-improving ground game is going to keep her safe on the mat when it does. I don't see her getting crucifixed like Andrade, like Caitlin Chukagian, and shit, man. If she were to even do better, then I think the girl's done nothing but shock me, through and through. So she's durable. I think she's going to get Valentina to the scorecards. I told you I have the over 1.5 parlayed. I also bet the over 2.5. And over 3.5 at even money is going to be my prop this week.
For my best bet of the card, it's the parlay that I've locked in so far. It's the over 1.5 rounds at minus 250 on the co-main and Rakhmonov to win. Just a quick breakdown of both of those. Since Val's entered the UFC in her 14-fight span, she's hit the over 1.5 13 of those times. And Shavkat Rakhmonov has won all 16 of his fights. So the way I'm looking at it is 30-1 that these things hit. And you can get it at minus 153, minus 160. I think that is a pretty safe parlay, and that's why it's my best bet.
I like both legs of those parlays for me. I'm going to go with my 2-unit money line shot. I got on Marc-Andre Barriault, minus 145. I do wish I probably got the original opener at plus money that people instantly steamed. But I am happy with my number at minus 145 that's still continuing to get hit. I think a slight favorite completely makes sense here. Both guys, they're coming off stoppage losses, but Marc-Andre Barriault pretty much just getting out-wrestled and submitted by a very good ground opponent in Fluffy Hernandez, with Marquez coming off an absolute, beating from RoboCop, being stopped bad on the feet. And then it's just returned from his injury. Honestly, Marquez hasn't looked good at all to me. He did punch his ticket to the UFC. It was one of the filthiest knockouts I've ever seen over Phil Hawes in the third round of the Contender Series. But that's pretty much how a lot of his wins come. He's just durable enough to survive the beatings, the onslaughts, and capitalize when his opponents fade. And that's how he beat Maki Pitolo after losing every single second of that fight, man. It's not a good showing for me, man. I don't think Marquez is anything but a brawler with bad cardio. Who I think he just hits hard. And Marc-Andre Barriault, besides getting sniped by a 6-foot-something cheaty in 15 seconds before getting range, I don't know. That doesn't tell me anything. I see him chin staying safe here. I think Eli's going to grind this fight, mix in some takedowns. He's got the much more measured approach, better volume, better cardio, better defensively. Better minute winner, man. I really like Marc-Andre Barriault to finish him late or to take this with an easy 30-27 decision.
Moving on to our quick pick section of the card, we start the night off in the lightweight division where we see Loik Radzhabov taking on Esteban Ribovics. I think I like the Tajikistan fighter and Loik Radzhabov to get this done. Line's gotten a little too high for my liking, but I'll pick Loik here.
Yeah, I'm kind of I wanted to parlay him earlier because I thought maybe he was getting ready for the Ultimate Fighter before Conor kicked him out. And he's a PFL finalist twice, but I don't know. He could be taking it on short notice, and his cardio was suspect in PFL. He's going to be the pick. Pass on the money line, though. Fareed Basharat taking on Damon Blackshear, another extremely big favorite at like minus 500. Fareed might not be the best of the Basharat brothers, but I think both brothers are absolute legit. I think he's going to be the pick here for sure.
Yeah, if Damon hadn't lost to Chris Moutinho, I think I would be looking at a dog spot, but I can't do it, so I'm with you on Basharat there. Moving down to the women's strawweight, Jessica Penne taking on Tabitha Ritchie. I like Tabitha Ritchie here, but I'm not going to pay that price tag on her at all, but I like her here. I guess she could grind out a win.
Yeah, don't pay minus 350 when she was minus 175 the first time they were scheduled.
That's crazy.
Look, Jessica Penne is a very good black belt as well on the mat, and Tabitha's going to try to take it there, I think. There is a jiu-jitsu competition where Tabitha gets armbarred. I've been seeing it out there a little bit. I'm not saying Penne is a live dog, but I'm definitely going to say don't play Ricci this week. Just feel like she could be the apple pie shitter, man. Cameron Simon taking on Mana Martinez. You know how I feel about that one, man. I might even unload another half unit. I like Mana Martinez money line at plus 250.
I'm on, I think this is our first disagreement. I'm on Cameron Simon here. I don't think he's looked good up until this point, but I do think he's going to win this fight. I don't know. Moving up to the welterweight division, Ian Machado Gary taking on Kenan Song. It's hilarious that he took her name too. I'll take Gary here.
I got Gary inside the distance. I think he's gonna get that first UFC finish. Julian Marquez taking on Marc-Andre Barriault up at middleweight. It may be best bet this week, man. I think he's potentially get a finish, but you gotta take a decision when you're gonna back Marc-Andre.
Yeah, I'll go with Marc-Andre Barriault here as well. Viviane Araujo taking on Amanda Ribas. I'll take Viviane. Like I said, it's not like I'm strong on it right now, but I like the fact that she went 5 rounds in her last fight. She didn't win any of them, but I like the fact that she stayed in there.
Yeah, going to be on the same side as Viviane Araujo on that one. Derek Brunson, Dricus du Plessis. A fight we didn't touch on at all, but a fight that's going to be exciting, We probably should have a little bit, but Derek Brunson talking retirement, I don't like it, Du Plessis just somehow catches a 7th wind in every one of his fights, and I think he's going to get taken down, and I think he's going to get up and knock Derek Brunson out, man. I'm going to play some violence here.
That's the worst thing is Duplessis is not good, and I will fade the shit out of him in the future.
Tried.
Yes, we've tried plenty of times.
All 3 times.
He'll probably bop Brunson on the head and get a meme knockout win for sure. But yeah, I'll go Duplessis here as well. Moving down to the men's bantamweight division, Cody Garbrandt versus Trevin Jones. Another one, I think maybe a meme bop. I'm gonna go Trevin Jones here by knockout. He's a decent fighter with an absolute crap record, and they're making his line. They're disrespecting him because he's a decent fighter, and Cody Garbrandt hasn't shown me anything about being a decent fighter recently.
Another thing about Trevin Jones, the knockout against Valiev and Bautista, this guy is a right-handed southpaw. He carries power in both hands, and I don't think Cody Garbrandt can take it anymore, man. I think we're going to agree Trevin Jones is going to upset some people here and probably send Cody packing. Main card, Bo Nickal, open it up against Jamie Pickett. Bo Nickal, first round sub. I don't know what else needs to be said.
Yeah, Bo Nickal sub. That's all I need to happen. Moving down to the lightweight division, Mateusz Gamrot versus Jalin Turner. I think Mateusz Gamrot is going to win this. He's going to make what looks like a super exciting matchup on paper not be as exciting. I think he just grinds him.
I'm with you. Mateusz Gamrot, I hope for the better set of my betting card that he comes through. Geoff, Neal, Shavkat, Rakhmonov. Hopefully, for the sake of your betting card, he is 17-0, and I think he gets a 17th finish, man. I think he's going to submit Geoff Neal.
I think it could be closer than the line suggests, but I do think that he wins this 85% of the time. So, yeah, Shavkat for me as well. Co-main event, Women's Flyweight Championship, Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso. I'm on the Grasso line. I think she could do anything that she wants, man. I'm big on Grasso here. I think she could definitely get the finish, but I think it's more likely that she gets the decision, which would help both of us in our overs.
Yeah, man. I don't care who wins this one. I just needed all the overs to hit. My gut says it goes to decision. My gut says Val does just enough to get that 8th or 9th ruby and fill up her belt. But it's 100% dog or pass, and I think regardless of the outcome, you're going to see Grasso cover that price tag you took a shot on. Main event, Goat's back. So glad. Breaking down a Jon Jones fight. Taking on Ciryl Gane. There is just so many red flags for hesitation on Jon Jones. They're all completely fair takes. But I'm riding with the GOAT, man. 5 rounds experience. Triple the fights. More than double the fights. I know he can make adjustments mid-round, mid-fight. Gambling with the GOAT, man. Jon Jones for the win.
So I'm on the opposite side. Nah, I'm just playing, man. The GOAT is back. You're right. Jon Jones. I'm going with him. He's, like you said, it's a tough fight for him. But I really want him to get one more win and then ride off into the sunset and kind of like stop all the steroid talk. It would be nice if under USADA he could go up a weight class and win the belt. I think it'd be undeniable even to the haters if he could get this done. So Jon Jones as well.
14 fights we just gave you the quick picks for. Hopefully you had a good time hanging out with us. Gave you some good betting lines. UFC has put together a fantastic card for us here on Saturday. Fantastic month of March and fights in general, man, for us to get into. We'll see you next week, hopefully with some profit.
Peace.